Ladies and gentlemen, hit subscribe to this channel right now. In a couple of seconds, you will hear testimony from Special Counsel Robert Hur, who did a fantastic job, by the way, and essentially gave Trump everything that Trump needs to indict, arrest, if he wants to, Biden after office in the manner they're trying to go after Trump. The difference is that Biden did not have the power to declassify as commander-in-chief. Based on Supreme Court precedent, Trump did have the power to declassify. Hit subscribe right now to read my writing on the Hill, the Huffington Post, Salon, the Jerusalem Post, the Federalist, other publications. Go to hagoodman.com. My super chat. Thank you. This is huge. Trump can actually indict numerous and arrest numerous people based on this special counsel testimony. Listen up right now.
JetSecurity.org, the real Robert Hur report, has unanimous consent.
Without objection. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Florida for 5 minutes.
February 8th, the White House. Question, Mr. President, why did you share classified information with your ghostwriter? The President, I did not share classified information. I did not share it. I guarantee I did not. That's not true, is it, Mr. Hur?
That is inconsistent with the findings based on the evidence in my report.
Yeah, so it's a lie, is just what regular people would say, right? Yeah, all right. So the next one. And all the stuff that was in my home was in filing cabinets that were either locked or able to be locked. That wasn't true either, was it?
That was inconsistent with the findings of our investigation.
Another lie, people might say, right? Because what you put in your report was among the places Mr. Biden's lawyers found classified documents in the garage was a damaged open box. So here's what I'm understanding, right? As Mr. Armstrong laid out, you find in your report that the elements of a federal criminal violation are met, but then you apply this senile cooperator theory that because Joe Biden cooperated and the elevator doesn't go to the top floor, you don't think you get a conviction. And I actually think you get to the right answer in that. I don't think Biden should have been charged. Don't think Trump should have been charged. But under the senile cooperator theory, isn't it frustrating that Biden continues to go out and lie about the basic facts of the report that lay out a federal criminal violation?
Congressman, I need to disagree with at least one thing that you said, which is that I found that all of the elements were met. One of the elements of the relevant mishandling statute is the intent element, and what my report reflects is my judgment that based on the evidence, I would not be able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt to a jury that that intent element had been met.
Right, but the reason you have that doubt is the senile cooperator theory. The fact that Joe Biden is so inept in responding that you can't prove the intent, which again, I don't quibble with that conclusion, but it's frustrating to be like, oh, well, this guy's not getting treated the same way as Trump because the elevator's not going to the top floor, so we can't prove intent. While at the same time, Biden goes out there at the White House and says, well, you know, he just blatantly lies. And what I'm trying to figure out is whether or not Biden's lying because he's still so senile, he hasn't read your report, or whether it's a little craftier and a little more devious and perhaps a little more intentional than we might otherwise think. So I also want to go to this Biden Penn Center. Did it give concern to you that the Biden Penn Center, where all this classified stuff was being mishandled, was being floated by foreign governments?
Congressman, we were concerned with getting to the bottom of all of the classified documents that were recovered during the course of our...
Yeah, but what bothers me is that the money that was paying for the place where the documents were being inappropriately held, it was the Chinese and it was other foreign countries. Did that play into your analysis? Did you look into the $1 billion in foreign funding sources at the Biden Center at UPenn, for example?
Congressman, we conducted a thorough, impartial, and fair investigation, and we were very, very concerned with getting to the bottom of all the relevant questions relating to the recovered documents.
Did you look into the fact that the Chinese were floating the place where this guy was keeping the documents unsecure? Yes or no?
Congressman, to the extent that we identified evidence that was relevant and significant to our investigation, we put it in our report.
Okay, well, it seemed relevant to me, maybe not to you. Another thing that seemed relevant to me is this ghostwriter, right? So the ghostwriter purposefully deletes this evidence that seems to be show culpability of Biden's crimes, and you don't charge him. Why did you not charge the ghostwriter with obstructing justice and deleting evidence?
Well, for a number of reasons that are laid out in the report, but in brief, Congressman, yes, when we interviewed the ghostwriter, he did tell us, and I'm trying to get the exact language, that one of the things on his mind, one of the things he was aware of, was that I had been appointed special counsel and was conducting an investigation.
Right, so he didn't, just so everybody knows, the ghostwriter didn't delete the recordings just as a matter of happenstance. Ghostwriter has recordings of Biden making admissions of crimes. He then learns that you've been appointed. He then deletes the information that is the evidence, and you don't charge him.
That is reflected in the report, and one of the reasons...
Like, what does somebody have to do to get charged with obstruction of justice by you? If like deleting the evidence of crimes doesn't count, what would meet the standard?
So, Congressman, as we state in the relevant chapter of the report, one of the things that Mr. Zwanitzer did not delete was transcripts of the recordings that he had created that included inculpatory evidence relating to Mr. Biden.
Oh, so if you destroy some evidence but not other evidence, that somehow absolves you of the evidence you destroy? Like, here's what I see. Zwanniger should have been charged, wasn't. Biden and Trump should have been treated equally. They weren't. And that is the double standard that I think a lot of Americans are concerned about.
So there are numerous statutes that Biden broke. Number one, he gave classified data to a writer, his ghostwriter. That is a statute that he broke, a classified data statute. Okay, the ghostwriter could have been working for any other country or an operative of a country. The point, I'm not saying that the ghostwriter was. I'm not accusing the writer of anything. I'm saying that had Trump done this, and they accused Trump of giving classified data to a foreign adversary, which was, of course, based on an anonymous source, here we have actual evidence that Biden literally gave classified data to a writer without a security clearance, and he still wasn't charged. Then they say, well, we're not going to charge him for the handling of classified data because other people packed the boxes. Well, other people packed the boxes for Trump. One of the people who packed the boxes for Trump was charged. The difference is that Trump was a president with the power to declassify. And the National Records Act does not have an enforcement mechanism. Nobody has ever been charged for not giving documents to the National Archives. It's never happened before. So Clinton had, for example, servers with top secret intelligence on them. The transfer of the classified and top secret intel onto those servers is illegal. It's not even possible from a cybersecurity perspective. I wrote about this in The Hill and the Huffington Post and Salon, but they said no reasonable prosecutor would indict. Then now they're saying, well, he doesn't remember, so we can't indict him. He wasn't president. He wasn't a president. He was a vice president and senator. Most of the classified data was mishandled when he was senator. He did not have the power to declassify, nor did Hillary Clinton. Trump had the power to declassify. Navy versus Egan is a Supreme Court case giving the commander-in-chief the power to declassify. Trump did not commit crimes. Clinton and Biden definitely did, and Biden even worse in a way, because Clinton probably got the okay from President Obama, which is also illegal, but she still got the okay to do what she did. Likely. Okay, I'm going out on a limb there. But anyway, hit subscribe if you're new to this channel. Let's go ahead and listen to a wonderful congresswoman right here.
Indiana is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just thank you, Special Counsel, for being here in these challenging times. And I want to tell you a few things that is interesting for me. You obviously could see that there is a motive, there is a legacy. You obviously see that there was a willful retention of these documents, but it's interesting for me that when you talk about sympathetic, well-meaning, older man with poor, elderly man with a poor memory, it seems like every attorney would advise you to be sympathetic and be well-meaning, and it seems like the whole FBI needs to do based on my hearings here, I need to do check on amnesia because everyone says doesn't recall. So it seems to me that it might have been something way more in his recollection. There's a typical I don't recall, because that's what everything's like. That's I've learned it here. So is there something more than that just I don't recall something for you to actually decide? Because it seems that this is the core of the whole investigation. Why didn't you pursue further the charges?
Congresswoman, my judgment as to how a jury would likely perceive and receive and consider evidence relating to all the evidence that would be put in by both the government and the defense at trial. It was based on a number of different sources, from documents, including various recordings, some of them from the 2016-2017 timeframe, some from our interview with the president in October of 2023. I think what you're asking about specifically is how the president presented himself during his interview in October of last year. And of course, I did take into account not just the words from the cold record of the transcript, but the entire manner in living color in real time of how the president presented himself during his interview.
Hopefully he didn't outsmart you and all of us. But before I yield, I just wanted to actually just comment on something, Mr. Raskin mentioned about, us not remembering communists. I actually grew up under communists, and I have a very good recollection what it is. And unfortunately, Terrence I on the rise, on the march, which he said, unfortunately, they've been emboldened by, President Obama, now by President Biden too. And unfortunately, our government in Department of Justice is really now resembles, a tyrannical government. It's sad for me to see that, but I'm going, and with a really double standard what we have there. But
I am very humbly asking.
So a jury where? A jury in, for example, let's say Biden was indicted in a Florida case. A jury in Florida, a jury in Alabama, a jury in Mississippi, a jury in a red state, Oklahoma, Missouri. They might look at, they would not give Biden the benefit of the doubt. So, a jury in New York is going to convict Trump of anything he's accused of. Same with D.C. Trump isn't going to spend even a second in prison or jail because he didn't commit a crime, which is why every single one of his criminal cases are being completely dismantled. They're imploding before our very eyes. But I think the special counsel, Robert Hur, did an amazing job. He gave Trump, he didn't do it on purpose, but because he was fair and just, Robert Hur, who did a fantastic job, was, honest, did the right thing for the United States of America, and just called it the way he saw it. Biden obviously committed numerous crimes. Reading classified data to his writer for a book or whatever he was writing is a crime. Okay? They then decided not to indict him because of his memory. But this is the man who has his finger on, God forbid, a potential button and who's leading this country. So he's so inept when it comes to being one fry short of a Happy Meal. The lights are on, but nobody's home. He's not the sharpest tool in the shed. We can go on forever. He's so utterly inept that he can't be convicted or charged because a jury wouldn't believe that he deliberately mishandled classified data because his brain or his cognitive skills are so poorly are not working. His cognitive skills are lacking. his brain power isn't all there, functioning at maybe 40 or 50%, according to the special counsel. And so, but we're supposed to say he's a great president, and look, we're in good hands. Biden is doing a fantastic job as he's too impaired to be criminally indicted. To my super chat, thank you, Brad. Brad, thank you so very much. Greatly appreciated, Brad. Thank you. So that's the double standard here. They, special counsel Hur keeps saying, well, a jury wouldn't. How do you know? A jury in New York will convict Trump of anything. A jury in Louisiana will convict Biden of anything, and also very likely what he actually did in terms of crimes. The problem here is that Biden actually did commit crimes. Here's the reality of the situation. Clinton, Biden, likely President Obama, they actually did commit crimes in terms of classified data. Trump did not. Trump had the entire system working against him, zero benefit of the doubt, absolutely zero emphasis on what a well-meaning jury might view Trump as having done, and he's indicted under 91 criminal charges. The system goes overboard in trying to protect Democrats, and you see every single case against Trump being dismantled because he didn't commit crimes. You have infinitely more evidence of criminal activity, which is why 50 intelligence officials came out of the woodwork, came out of nowhere to say, oh yeah, the laptop, it's a plot by the Kremlin. So, I mean, it's pretty amazing. Brad, thank you again. The double standard is unbelievable, but let's continue.
Oversight Committee, Mr. Comer is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. During the Oversight Committee interviews, we've identified a number of White House employees who were involved in the mishandling of classified documents under the leadership of President Biden. Special Counsel Hur, can you please tell us approximately how many current and former White House employees you interviewed related to your investigation?
Chairman Comer, I don't have that figure immediately at hand. Of course, it was a subset of the 173 interviews that we conducted during our investigation.
Your report indicates that one of those former White House employees who you interviewed was Dana Remus. Is that correct?
We did interview Ms. Remus.
Ms. Remus was President Biden's former White House counsel, correct?
She was President Obama's former White House counsel.
I'm sorry, President Obama's White House counsel. Yes. Related to Ms. Remus, in your report on page 257, you wrote, in May 2022, White House counsel Dana Remus undertook an effort to retrieve Mr. Biden's files from the Penn Biden Center. Remus described the original purpose of that effort as gathering materials to prepare for potential congressional inquiries about the Biden family's activities during the period from 2017 to 2019. Now, it seems odd to me that Dana Remus and Joe Biden's personal lawyers were obtaining documents related to potential congressional inquiries about the Biden family activities when Joe Biden has publicly claimed he had no involvement with his family's business dealings. Can you provide more information about why Dana Remus, a government employee, was retrieving Joe Biden's documents from the Penn Biden Center?
Chairman, I am able to tell you and clarify information that appears in the report about relevant, significant sources of information, but I am not in a position to be able to go beyond that.
When you interviewed President Biden, did you ask him what documents he possessed at Penn Biden Center that could be related to a potential congressional inquiry about his family's activities?
We asked President Biden a wealth of questions about all of the different sets of classified materials that were recovered during the course of our investigation.
Did anything pertain specifically to our congressional inquiry of President Biden that you recall?
If there are more specific aspects of it that you have in mind, Chairman, that would be helpful to me.
Interest pertaining to his family's influence peddling activities?
If it's helpful, Chairman, Appendix A does list in table chart form a brief description of all of the marked classified documents that were recovered in our investigation.
We intend to interview Ms. Remus, and the recording or transcript of your interview would be highly relevant to our future questioning of her. Can you confirm that you did, in fact, record her in your interview?
It was our practice to record the interviews that we conducted, Chairman Comer.
Additionally, in the course of the investigation, the Oversight Committee learned from a Penn Biden Center employee that Annie Tomasini, a White House employee, visited the Penn Biden Center in 2021. Did you interview Annie Tomasini in the course of your investigation?
Chairman, we do not, the report does not reflect that specific name, but what I can tell you is that the report does reflect that we interviewed the Director of Oval Office Operations, and one of the places that's reflected is footnote 973.
Okay. The Oversight Committee interviewed Kathy Chung, a Department of Defense employee and former assistant to Vice President Biden, and learned that Ms. Chung visited the Biden Penn Center in June 2022 after being contacted by White House counsel in May 2022. This was months before classified documents were allegedly found in November 2022. Did you interview Kathy Chung in the course of your investigation?
Chairman, I believe that the substance relating to the subject that you're asking about appears on page 259 of the report. And while the name Kathy Chung does not appear in the text of the report, there are references to interviews of an executive assistant, including at footnote 988.
Good. The Oversight Committee also learned from its interviews with Penn Biden Center employees and Kathy Chung that Dana Remus, Anthony Bernal, and Ashley Williams, all at the time White House employees, then visited the Penn Biden Center on different occasions before the alleged discovery of classified materials in November 2022. Did you interview these individuals during your investigation?
We interviewed many individuals, and I can assure you, Chairman, that it was a priority of ours to interview all the relevant sources of information about these documents, how they got there, who knew about them, and who accessed them.
So again, they were all recorded, is that correct? So there would be recordings?
It was our practice to interview recordings, yes, sir.
How many White House employees visited the Penn Biden Center before classified materials were reportedly discovered there in November 2022?
I don't have
according to the White House.
Sir, I don't have an exact count of
how many visits to the Penn Biden Center were made by either White House employees or President Biden's personal attorney?
But that should be detailed in Chapter 14 of the report, sir.
So they obviously destroyed evidence. They obviously did everything possible to protect Biden from an indictment. And you're going to hear right now a Democrat say, well, he's exonerated. He's not exonerated. Democrats did commit classified data crimes. Trump did not. Okay, Trump was a president. This is very simple to understand. If you're a wonderful, morally superior liberal Democrat and you think that what he did was worse than Biden, Trump was a president with the power to declassify. There are Supreme Court precedents, Navy versus Egan. He was commander-in-chief. Say it slowly. Wonderful, morally superior, highly educated liberal Democrats who despise Trump. He was commander-in-chief, and Trump will be commander-in-chief again after November of 24. As commander-in-chief, something that Hillary Clinton was not, he had the power to declassify. He stated he declassified every document that they accused him of holding on to. They have to prove that he didn't declassify the documents. Furthermore, there's no enforcement mechanism. Every president has taken classified data with him after he left office. Okay, you had also, by the way, a private server in the Bush administration with 20 plus million emails deleted. Okay, so you have had Democrats and never Trump Republicans do infinitely worse. Trump was a president with the power to declassify. Biden did not have that authority, yet he kept classified data at a university with people who did not have clearances, security clearances, and Clinton had servers with top secret intel that she managed to siphon onto them. So that also is highly illegal. And impossible from a cybersecurity perspective, okay? But he gave flat out, without a shadow of a doubt, that Biden read classified data to his ghostwriter. Trump never did anything of the sort. And if Trump gave classified data to during a negotiation, he has the right to do that. That's what all presidents do. Because they're presidents. And they're able to talk about classified data and declassify things whenever they want to. Let's go ahead, and this is an interesting one. This is kind of an amusing one. One of the Democrats here, far left, very, very progressive Democrat, wants to say that Biden did not commit a crime, and Special Counsel Hur is not having it. Hit subscribe right now if you're new to this channel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Special Counsel Hur, thank you for being here. Thank you for your work. In your investigation, you reviewed more than 7 million documents and conducted 173 interviews of 147 witnesses, including President Biden. Is that correct?
Yes, Congresswoman.
And your 15-month investigation cost several $million and resulted in a comprehensive 345-page report with several dozen pages of appendices. Is it correct that, as it says in the first sentence of your executive summary, that your investigation concluded with an assessment that, quote, no criminal charges are warranted in this matter?
Correct.
So this lengthy, expensive, and independent investigation resulted in a complete exoneration of President Joe Biden for every...
Some important context. The special counsel stated numerous times that according to his view of what a jury would accept. Again, a jury in Florida, a jury in Louisiana, a jury in Mississippi, a jury in Alabama, a jury in Oklahoma, a jury in Missouri, a jury in Arizona, okay, Georgia, a red state jury, or a blue state jury. So there's enough here to indict and arrest and convict Biden if Trump ever wanted to do so. There's obviously not enough to convict Trump of anything because he won't be in his trial in Florida. But listen to the special counsel right now.
Every document you discussed in your report, you found insufficient evidence that the president violated any laws about possession or retention of classified materials. The primary law that you analyzed for potential prosecution was part of the Espionage Act, 18 U.S.C. 793E, which criminalizes willful retention or disclosure of national defense information. Is that correct?
Congresswoman, that is one statute that we analyzed. I need to go back and make sure that I take note of the word that you used, exoneration. That is not a word that
I'm
appears
going to
in the
continue
report,
with
and that's
my
not part of my
questions.
task as a
I'm going to
prosecutor.
continue with my questions. I know that the term
I ultimately reached
I know
related
that
to whether
the term
sufficient evidence existed such that the likely
you didn't-
outcome
you exonerated
would be a
him.
conviction.
I know
I
that
did
the
not
term
exonerate him.
willful
That word does not appear in
retention
the
has a
report, Congresswoman.
Mr. Hur, it's my time. Thank you. I know that the term willful retention has a particular legal meaning, and I want to make sure that that meaning is absolutely clear to the American people.
You saw now that the truth was too much for the Democratic Congresswoman. Also, there's 18 U.S. Code 793F, and that's unintentional. You don't have to. There have been people convicted in the military of unintentionally, throwing a classified document in the trash and something along those lines, and then they get indicted and imprisoned. So, and number one, there was intentional. Everything Biden did was intentional. Same with Clinton. The judgment of whether something is intentional or unintentional is done by, let's say, a special counsel in Biden's administration, or a director, the Honorable James Comey, working for President Obama. When they say, well, Clinton unintentionally did these things, everything was with intent. Also, Biden's memory was a lot better years back. Everything he did was intentional. But the thing is, they actually committed crimes because Trump had the power to declassify. Clinton and Biden did not. That's end of story there. They were not commander-in-chief. Trump was. And yet they indicted Trump and not these people. And then there's 18 U.S. Code 793F. You can indict and convict somebody for unintentionally mishandling classified documents. The issue of intent was brought about by the Honorable James Comey. There was never that issue whether something was intentional or unintentionally mishandled prior to Clinton.
Before we go any further, as you wrote in your report, to prove as a matter of law that the president, quote, willfully retained any documents, you would need to prove beyond a reasonable doubt two elements. First, that the president knowingly retained or disclosed national defense information, and second, that he knew that this conduct was unlawful. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And to be very,
and I'm sorry.
You do not have that standard with Trump. Nothing Trump ever did he thought was unlawful, number one. Number two, the Federal Bureau of Investigation and others knew exactly where the classified data was, or the data, where Trump was storing it. They were in negotiation. He has every right to negotiate with the National Archives. So what was he doing that was unlawful or intentional there? When they say Trump intentionally mishandled classified data, everyone knew from Trump to the National Archives that he was holding data. He was a former president with the power to declassify, and he stated categorically he declassified the documents. So where was the intentional harm here? So the standard by which they judge Biden is not the standard by which they judge Trump. And everyone knows this. That's one of the reasons Trump will win in November. And he can definitely arrest and indict Biden because Biden actually did commit crimes. Okay, you can definitely prove intent with Biden, especially if you have a jury. It'd be a DC jury, so likely a DC jury. Although, yeah, a jury in Pennsylvania. But anyway.
Congressman, that it was national defense information. That's an important third element.
Okay, thank you. To be very, very clear, you did not find sufficient evidence to prove either of those elements beyond a reasonable doubt to show that Mr. Biden willfully retained any of the classified national defense materials that were recovered during your investigation, correct?
My conclusion was that the admissible evidence was not sufficient to make conviction at trial a probable outcome.
Not
a probable outcome and conviction at trial and sufficient evidence are euphemisms for, depending on the jury. If a jury is in a blue state, they will convict Trump. If a jury is in a red state, they'll convict Biden. But I think what Robert Hur did was fantastic. I think that he did an amazing job. Special Counsel Robert Hur is a patriot. He's awesome. He did a wonderful, wonderful job because he outlined everything that Biden did, in addition to giving classified data to his ghostwriter, which was intentional and was a criminal act.
Not sufficient. Thank you. Let me ask you about a few specific examples so the American people are clear. One set of documents was discovered by investigators in the president's Delaware home. His staff had assembled those documents into binders in 2014 to prepare him for an event with Charlie Rose. Some of the documents in those binders were marked classified. You reviewed all of the facts surrounding the classified documents in those binders, and you determined, and this is a quote from your report, these facts do not support a conclusion that Mr. Biden willfully retained the marked classified documents in these binders, correct?
That language does appear in the report.
You also reviewed another set of classified documents from the president's home related to the Afghanistan troop surge in 2009, and you evaluated whether the president willfully retained such documents in his Delaware home or a home that he rented in Virginia in 2017. In your report, you said that there was, quote, a shortage of evidence, end quote, for any wrongdoing, and, quote, other innocent explanations for the documents that we cannot refute, end quote. Are those quotes correct?
Congresswoman, if you have particular page sites for those quotations, I'd be happy to confirm their accuracy.
Page 6. It's right up on the screen.
With respect to the two quotes that are on the screen, In addition to this shortage of evidence, there are other innocent explanations for documents we cannot refute, and we conclude the evidence is not sufficient to convict, and we decline to recommend prosecution.
I was just going to get to that, and you concluded that, quote, the evidence is not sufficient to convict, and we decline to recommend prosecution, end quote. Those are your words in the report, correct?
Those words appear in the report.
Thank you. President Biden's counsel discovered a different set of documents at the Penn Biden Center and voluntarily turned them over to the FBI. Those documents contain national security information.
So the Democratic Congresswoman literally found, I believe, 3 different locations. He had classified data in 3 different locations. And in each of those locations, they couldn't find intent. Trump had classified data in 1 location, and he was a president with the power to declassify. Furthermore, there's no intent for Trump to have committed a crime. Where's the intent? Where's the intent? He was a president with the power to declassify, and he was negotiating with the National Archives and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. That's not intentionally breaking the law. You can negotiate with a government agency. So if you negotiate with a government agency as a former president, you're breaking the law. Is that how it works? The issue of intent doesn't even need to be utilized. He was utilizing one statute, U.S. Code 18 U.S. Code 793F, I believe, does not need. You don't need the intent element there.
But you determined that you could not, in fact, prove that President Biden willfully retained those documents because, quote, the evidence suggests that the marked classified documents found at the Penn Biden Center were sent and kept there by mistake. Therefore, we decline any criminal charges related to those documents, end quote, correct?
The language, we decline any criminal charges related to those documents, does appear at page 311 of the report.
Thank you. You also reached a similar conclusion regarding the documents found in President Biden's Senate papers at the University of Delaware. Quote, for these reasons, it is likely that the few classified documents found in Mr. Biden's Senate papers at the University of Delaware were there by mistake, correct?
That language does appear at page 325 of the report.
So it seems to me that the crux of the report, the main story is
the main story is that it was a mistake. It was at the University of Delaware, UPenn. It was a mistake. It was at the classified data. It was at one of his rented homes. It was a mistake. The classified data was at his other home. It was a mistake that the classified data was given to his ghostwriter. Everything's just a mistake. Every single criminal act Biden does pertaining to classified data is simply a harmless mistake, and you can't prove intent. Meanwhile, Trump literally has the power to declassify as a former president and was negotiating with the Federal Bureau of Investigation through his lawyers and the National Archives, and yet he's indicted. Got it. And that's one of the reasons Trump will win in November of 24. The absolute unmitigated corruption of the Democratic Party, the double standard, where a laptop results in 50 intelligence officials stating that, it's a Kremlin plot. And by the way, this congresswoman and others should understand that Bernie Sanders was cheated in 2016 by the DNC chairwoman and others who ended up, the DNC chairwoman ended up working for Clinton's campaign. But they cheated Bernie Sanders. They don't even have a functioning primary. And this is while they went and did everything possible to try to say that, Clinton's use of a private server was unintentional. Okay, you could definitely, if you had a Federal Bureau of Investigation, or if you had a an investigation outside the special counsel by Republicans in the House and in the Senate, you'll find the intent there. So, and you don't even need intent. 18 U.S. Code 793F, you don't need intent. So, This is President Trump talking about the double standard.
It was just announced that Joe Biden, his Department of Injustice, will bring 0 charges against Crooked Joe, despite the fact that he willfully retained and disclosed troves of ultra-classified national security documents. Now, that's not what I've been hearing, and he's not under the Presidential Records Act, which is a big thing. I am. It's a protective act. They're trying desperately to spin the Biden document disaster into but wasn't Trump worse? No, Trump was peanuts by comparison. If Biden is not going to be charged, he said, that's up to them. Look, if he's not going to be charged, that's up to them. But then I should not be charged.
These guys.
So you have numerous examples. Ladies and gentlemen, of Biden committing crimes. Numerous examples. And every single time when they say, well, we had classified data at this location, at a rented home, at his house, at a University of Delaware, University of Pennsylvania, I believe those were the 2 universities. Oh, well, we can't find that he intentionally did so. It's like, well, where was the intent with Trump? Because media wanted, they said, well, he didn't give back the documents to the National Archives. He didn't have to. The National Archives does not have an enforcement mechanism, has never gone after a former president. They do everything with Trump. What Democrats do is they get government agencies to go after Trump in a manner they've never gone after other presidents. And then they say, well, this is unique. Trump, we've never had a president like Trump. Yeah, we've never had government agencies go after a former president at the behest of the Democratic Party. So the double standard is unbelievable. You definitely can prove intent, because one of the statements was the innocent excuses. We couldn't refute the innocent excuses. Well, you can definitely refute innocent excuses. Okay, prisons are filled with criminals who, as part of their defense, gave many innocent excuses that were absurd and outlandish. Okay, the courts generally don't, acknowledge stupid excuses that aim to be innocent and, gosh, we just did this, we didn't really know. Nicholas! Thank you so much, Nicholas. To my viewers in Australia, Paul and Nicholas, thank you so very, very much. Greatly appreciated. My super chat, thank you. So, yeah, Brad, thank you. So, the whole thing is just really bizarre. Here you have, this is an interesting one.
Defense information.
Very good. I'd like to focus my questioning on Chapter 14 of your report. The classified documents found at the Penn Biden Center. You state in your report that the documents found at the Penn Biden Center were the most highly classified, sensitive, and compartmentalized materials recovered during your investigation. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Many of the documents came from Mr. Biden's West Wing office. That's also correct, isn't it?
I believe that is reflected in the report. Did you ask if he had packed the boxes himself? I believe that was one of the questions that we asked, and that is reflected in the transcript now available to the committee.
I think it's important. How would you characterize the packing of these boxes? Was it slow and meticulous, or were they packed in haste without much scrutiny at all?
I don't recall off the top of my head exactly how he characterized it, but I think the gist of the evidence is that the manner in which files were packed up and moved out at the end of the Obama administration was something of a rushed manner.
Very good. According to your report, the boxes were moved between multiple offices, between Mr. Biden departing his West Wing office in January of 17 and his arrival at the Penn Biden Center's permanent offices in October of 17. Were any of these offices authorized to store classified information?
No.
When the boxes finally arrived at the Penn Biden Center's permanent offices, how were they stored?
I believe when the materials were recovered, some of them were stored in a storage closet, and I believe others of them were in file cabinet drawers.
So what's your
I would refer
assessment
you to the report.
What's your assessment of security and access control measures at the Penn Biden Center?
That was something that we looked at. There were some security access controls at the Penn Biden Center, but we did get a handle on people who had access to the office space during the time period when we believed the materials were there. And there were other people, including students and some foreign dignitaries, that visited that facility at the time.
Very good. You anticipated my next question. So when the boxes were discovered to have classified documents more than 5 years later, who discovered these boxes? It was Patrick Moore. Is that correct?
Correct. One of the president's personal counsel.
And did Mr. Moore have some type of active security clearance at the time?
No.
How about the executive assistant at the Penn Biden Center?
No.
On page 265 of your report.
I'm sorry, Congressman, I may have misspoken there. I am not certain whether or not that executive assistant had an active security clearance at the time.
Very good. On page 265 of your report, you stated, when interviewed by FBI agents, Moore believed the small closet was initially locked and that the Penn Biden Center staff member provided a key to unlock it, but his memory was fuzzy on that point. But an interview with Mr. Biden's executive assistant seemed to contradict his statement. Do you remember this exchange, and did in fact it contradict each other?
Sir, you're asking if I remember the exchange with Mr. Moore during our interview with him?
Right. Do you remember them contradicting each other?
I don't remember that contradiction specifically, but generally during the interview, sometimes we heard things from some witnesses that were in tension with what we heard from other witnesses, and we did our best to resolve those conflicts.
So, with Democrats, the level of suspicion, the standard or the level of suspicion and doubt is non existent when it comes to Clinton or Biden. Oh my God, no reasonable prosecutor would. We couldn't prove it. So, you know what? We're going to look into the future and say a jury would never want to convict a Democrat. But with Trump, they just accuse him of everything, even the most absurd accusations, like Trump committed a campaign finance violation in New York when the FEC is in D.C. So then he's indicted in New York because of New York record-keeping laws that they turn into a felony. I mean, they go above and beyond to indict and imprison Trump. And with Trump, he's actually abiding by the law. There is no law that he broke pertaining to classified data. Zero law he broke. He was literally negotiating with his attorneys. And it's not like you suddenly found private servers or like you suddenly found classified data in 3 or 4 different locations. And then could you imagine if Trump read classified data to his ghostwriter I mean, it would never pass. And then they actually said he tried to read classified data, and that was a lie. That story was a lie. But they give the benefit of the doubt to Democrats. They never give the benefit of the doubt to Trump. And the suspicion is non-existent for Democrats. But with Trump, they're always beyond highly suspicious. It's almost like petulant and malicious. Actually, it is petulant and malicious. Nicholas, thank you so very much. Nicholas, thank you. Thank you so much, Nicholas. Greatly, 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 greatly appreciated. Thank you. Let's listen to pretty awesome Texas congressman.
Recognize myself for 5 minutes. Special Counsel Herr, thank you for a number of things. First, thank you for agreeing to testify today. Second, thank you also for sharing your family's story at the beginning of your testimony. It is an extraordinary story of them coming to America. Third, let me also thank you for your in-depth investigation and your detailed report, and generally for your service as special counsel. It's not something that I think many people would look for, and certainly comes with a lot of burden. So thank you for your work. In your opening statement, you described your investigation as, quote, thorough and independent, and I agree with that. One where you attempted to give, quote, rigorous and detailed analysis. I also agree with that. And one where you say you, quote, must show your work, which we very much appreciate today. We don't normally see that. Did I recall your opening statement correctly as it relates to those quotes?
Yes, sir, you do.
In fact, as part of your investigation, you interviewed about 150 different witnesses. You looked at millions of different documents because you wanted to do a thorough investigation. Isn't that true?
Correct.
And you did this because you took your investigation extremely seriously and you wanted to reach accurate conclusions, correct?
Very much.
Then let's review some of your specific findings regarding the issues pertaining to competency and mental capacity of President Biden. Because as you say, this is very important to whether or not there was criminal willful intent. As you can see, I've set forth a number of different quotes up here on this board that I've prepared, some of which I'll read to you. Page 5, you say Mr. Biden's, quote, Mr. Biden's memory was significantly limited. Then again on page 6, you say Mr. Biden would likely present himself to a jury as a sympathetic, well-meaning, elderly man with a poor memory. Then on page 207, you say Mr. Biden's memory also appeared to have significant limitations. And then again on page 208, he did not remember when he was vice president, and he did not remember even within several years when his son Beau died. You finally make the statement on page 248, quote, for these jurors, Mr. Biden's apparent lapses and failures in February and April 2017 will likely appear consistent with the diminished capacities and faulty memory he showed. Those were astounding conclusions to me, and as I look through those quotes, I have to say I hearken back to my time before Congress. I was a judge, and one of the things that I oversaw was guardianships. And frankly, when I read your conclusions, red flags began to go up in my mind because I oversaw hundreds of guardianships back in Texas. And as I saw your conclusions, I began to wonder, what does the D.C. statute say about guardianships and how you define an incapacitated individual in Washington, D.C.? And I want to show you this statute because I presume, are you familiar with the statute at all?
I am not, Congressman.
So I didn't think that you'd probably reviewed that. So let me just read to you some of these, some of the definitions here. An adult whose ability to receive and evaluate information effectively or to communicate decisions is impaired to such an extent that he or she lacks the capacity to manage all or some of his financial resources. That's the first part of the definition of incapacity, an incapacitated individual under the guardianship statute in the District of Columbia. And quite frankly, I see tons of overlap from what you set forth in your testimony, in your written report, and the definition here. The phrases are almost identical. I would posit that if he cannot manage national top secret resources, I'm not sure how he can manage his personal financial resources. And given your report's findings that his memory was, quote, significantly limited, and that he is a person with, quote, diminished faculties, and with, quote, faulty memory, it makes me wonder how close he is coming to meeting this definition of an incapacitated individual, such that he should have a guardian appointed by the D.C. courts for his personhood. There is at least, I believe, a prima facie argument to say that there is substantial evidence to indicate such. And you mentioned it's not just what you written in the report, but it was the demeanor of President Biden as you interviewed him. I'll say in conclusion, whether he does or does not meet this definition, I believe your findings raise significant concerns about his current fitness for the office of the president, and certainly his fitness going forward in the future. And I appreciate the fact that you were brazen enough to raise this issue in this report, because you knew this would be significant in your findings, but you did so based on a very significant, very detailed, very thorough, independent report. And I praise you for that, that doing your duty in such a way. Thank you, Special Counsel.
So they go here. They admit that the only reason, ladies and gentlemen, the only reason he wasn't indicted was because a jury would find him to be a well-meaning old man with a poor memory. Okay? So when you had that Democratic Congresswoman say, you found that there was no evidence to indict, the reason that the intent, that the special counsel didn't find intent, was because Biden's memory and his cognitive abilities were so poor. So it's like Democrats continually get caught with actual criminal activity, and then they twist themselves into pretzels. They bend over backwards. And the interesting thing is, it's like you have that far left Democrat doing everything possible to protect the Democratic Party, when Bernie Sanders himself in 2016, when Bernie Sanders was cheated. And it's like that political party doesn't even have a functioning primary. That political party doesn't even have a functioning primary. And so not only do they not have a functioning primary, but you have a situation where the reason they didn't indict, or the reason they didn't find intent, is because they believed, the special counsel believed, that a jury would look at Biden as a well-meaning elderly person with poor cognitive skills. So therefore, they can't indict him. But he committed those crimes. Furthermore, he had the cognitive skills years back. And he committed the crimes years back. So anyway, the double standard is unbelievable. Trump is not going to spend even 1 second in prison or jail. The problem, however, is that you actually could indict and convict Biden and Clinton. They didn't do so, and that's one of the reasons Clinton lost, and that'll be one of the reasons Democrats will lose. I think they'll replace Biden, but they will lose to Trump, because Trump will win again in part because everyone sees the double standard. It's unbelievable. And everyone sees exactly. Everyone sees what's taking place. The Democrats defending Biden they're not deceiving the rest of the country. Everybody knows there's a double standard. So it's only bolstering Trump's campaign. Hit subscribe to this channel. I'll be back tonight at around 10:30 p.m. Eastern. Thanks, everybody.